The 6 teams who no one wants to face in the college football playoff are Indiana, Ohio State, Oregon, Georgia, Notre Dame, and Texas Tech. And I want to go through each one, dedicate some time to them, and explain why no one wants to play them. Let's start off with Indiana. Indiana, out of this bunch, is my favorite team for a variety of reasons. Not in the sense that I'm biased toward them, but in the sense that I think they are the scariest within context. Indiana is strong at every position when healthy. They do not have any weaknesses. Again, when healthy, that is a big if. They, when healthy, have a higher floor than anyone. But the floor really begins to drop off when they start sustaining injuries, especially at the most important positions. So, offensive line, for example, where injuries are the most common compared to any position. Their current FPI rating is second. They're only a tenth of a point behind Ohio State, and they're a fifth of a point ahead of Ohio State in ESPN's efficiency metrics. Their points per play, their expected points added per play, their per play efficiency rating. What makes Indiana so special is, again, their floor is the highest in football when healthy. Their ceiling when healthy is also very high, probably not as high as Ohio State or some of these other teams that we'll talk about, but certainly Ohio State. Regardless of that, though, having a high floor on top of, I would say, this year, the best staff in America is very important for a playoff game setting, especially in a individual game, maybe not a series of games, because that especially factors in depth and you'll likely suffer injuries. And depending on what that is, that could cripple Indiana. But from an individual game standpoint, if you are a team and you want to advance really far in the playoffs and you want to have some guarantees and be able to, get that dominant playoff win, to face an opponent you're not scared of, Indiana's probably the last team on that list when healthy. I love their staff, their offense, their defense. They know how to generate a pass rush. They, outside of Ohio State, probably will have the best linebackers in the playoff. And while Ohio State's linebackers are more athletic than Indiana's are, Indiana's are used just about as well as Ohio State's, and I would say they tackle just about as well as Ohio State's do. Their defensive line is incredible. Their offensive line, when healthy, is among one of the best in the playoffs as well, and that's including Oregon, that's including Notre Dame, whose trench play is up there, and Miami, if they're able to make it. Another team to discuss, Texas Tech. Texas Tech, most people would not put on such a list, but they can win it all. Their efficiency rating is third. Their FPI rating is fifth. The only thing that holds them down is priors in power ratings, even more so than Indiana, because Indiana was top 10 last year. Their defensive coordinator, Sheil Wood, commands the most explosive defense in America. Quarterback, when healthy, is a strength. Their rushing attack and their entire defense is just full of weapons and fantastic players. Their one loss to Arizona State was a close loss where everything went wrong for them. They played their backup quarterback and they nearly won that game. They've dominated every other opponent in 11 out of 12 of their games, all of which were wins, obviously, because they dominated their opponents. This is one of the best teams in America. And what is scary about Texas Tech is they have the best defensive line by a mile in the country. No one compares to it. You say Indiana's does because of numbers. Well, they do not have the NFL talent. You say Ohio State's does due to the NFL talent, but they don't have the numbers. And a big part of the reason why Ohio State, has that explosiveness up front is they can put their secondary on an island. And they have two day one, day two linebackers. Texas Tech is a good elite college linebacker in Jacob Rodriguez, but they do not have that duo Ohio State does. Their D-line, independent of any supporting cast, is the nation's best, especially their edge players, especially them. any offensive line would struggle against this defensive line. No offensive line would move this defensive line 5 yards back, 4 yards back, maybe even less than that. It is an absolute non-negotiable. It might be the biggest non-negotiable in the college football playoff. Might be. But Ohio State's wide receiver room would have something to say about that. And as the number one team in power ratings, number two in ESPN's efficiency metrics, their staff is elite, their quarterback's elite, their entire roster really is elite. The only position that is less than desirable is special teams, and then tight end and offensive line, while I would say good, great, are units that do have a floor to them. Ohio State's O-line has I would say great ceiling and just kind of like meh floor to it. Their tight end group, I would say great ceiling, sometimes can have a meh floor. Both performed very well against Michigan. Both have had other games that are less than desirable. The defense, though, has always been elite from the jump. If you want to sector the offensive line into different positions, tackle has been pretty much good at the very worst to elite at best. And running back has come on for them. But their biggest non-negotiable will always be wide receiver. It always will be. Even if other positions on paper are performing better, with Hartline there as the receivers coach, especially with Smith there, wide receiver will always be their biggest non-negotiable, and there will be no other position that will match it. There just won't be. And with them healthy and playing well, I just don't know which secondary is going to lock those guys down. You can't. You can only slow them down. And even then, I would question if you can do that. And that's what makes Ohio State so scary, is if you match up with them well enough, they might not be as scary as a healthy IU, where if IU's totally healthy, their floor is so high that you just won't match up with them well at all. You'll just have to straight up beat them. But Ohio State, with how ridiculously good those receivers are, especially since they're the number one power rated team, could also be in that same category, where even if, say, you're Tech and your D-line in theory should wreck that offensive line, will it matter? Because your offensive line will also be wrecked by Ohio State's D-line, and they have the quarterback and receiver play to compensate for that. You don't, and they have a depth edge over you. So you will, you do not want to play Ohio State. This channel will make you a college football expert and help you enjoy watching games and make more accurate predictions. So what are you waiting for? Like, subscribe, ring the notification bell, comment your thoughts, and watch the video all the way through so that you can get the full package. And check the description and pinned comment for more ways to help yourself and this channel. You don't. And I think these three are kind of in their own category. Where Tech with their D-line would scare any offense. Ohio State, period, scares everyone. In Indiana, when you factor in the fact they've been able to punch above their weight class and were able to control a team who's fourth in national title odds, if healthy, that challenge is so unique that I don't know how you prepare for that. But these next teams are also pretty intimidating and scary. Oregon, similar to IU were if healthy, they're very intimidating. But they're so banged up, and we don't know how long-term those are, to where you can't quite give them that same floor that IU has, where it seems like IU is getting all of their key players back. They do, however, in comparison to, say, Texas Tech and Indiana, have that talent ceiling where those two teams might lack that's more similar to an Ohio State, Georgia, Notre Dame, or Alabama. Dante Morris played like a first-round quarterback at times. The receivers, when healthy, have looked pretty good. Kenyon Sadiq is a freak. When healthy, the offensive line, I think, is the best in America. And this is a top 5 defense, top 10 at the very worst. They're 4th in ESPN's efficiency metrics, 4th in FPI, tied with Notre Dame with that 25 power rating. And I think that Dan Lanning's a hell of a coach. I understand that in big games, he hasn't been the most successful, but then again, who is, outside of Kirby Smart and recently joining the party, is Ryan Day. And a lot of that has to do with peaking. Like Kirby Smart was his best in big games and fielded his best teams when he had Brock Bowers and when he had Jalen Carter, for example, and Trayvon Walker and Nolan Smith, and I'm for Jordan Davis. Almost forgot that massive defensive tackle. When he had those freaks, those were his best teams. Ohio State is peaking right now because they have a centennial wide receiver and maybe their best safety in program history. Those things don't last forever. Didn't for Georgia, it won't for Ohio State. For Oregon, they have not yet had that, and maybe they won't ever. It's hard to have those type of players. Not every program has those, but they have not peaked yet. They aren't peaking right now. But with the classes they've brought in, and if they're able to get healthy, and especially for the quarterfinals moving on, maybe they'll be peaking just much later than anyone is used to the national champion peaking, and they could go on a run and win it all. I would not want to face Oregon if they're not banged up. Now, if they are banged up, they could be food. They could be, depending on which team they're playing. They could be the hunted rather than the hunter. It's the same thing with Notre Dame. If Jeremiah Love is out, this team can't win it all. Like they're non-negotiables. They're running backs. It's not even the O-line, which is awesome. It's not any part of the defense outside of maybe Leonard Moore at corner. It's all of that, but with the fact that it's so hard to stop that running back duo, that they're guaranteed a high floor of points and of TOP and ball control when healthy, where they affect how a defense plans. Now, if it's just Jadarian Price and Love is out with that injury, that changes everything. And now you can game plan for the offense differently, and at that point, I don't think Notre Dame can win it all. But I'm assuming he's going to be healthy. We've talked a lot about health here with these teams. And really outside of Ohio State and Texas Tech had some issues with health, but it seems like those are cleared up. Indiana's might be cleared up. Oregon's and Notre Dame's, we have no idea right now, but I'm going to give them some benefit of the doubt. Notre Dame, with that running back attack, with how they have improved on offense throughout the year and on defense, it feels like they're improving at the right time. And Leonard Moore is a stud. Jeremiah Love and Jadarian Price are studs. Carr could be a future stud. Rudolph is one of the best offensive line coaches in the country. They could be intimidating to face, not in the same sense as Ohio State, who could just straight up dominate you, or Texas Tech that could sack your QB into oblivion, or Indiana who could put together the perfect game plan, and through that, and being the most fundamentally sound team with one of the best rushing attacks in this playoff, maybe even the best if you want to look at balance, then they could defeat you handily and blow you out. Notre Dame's is more so in the way that they've been here before, and they've won close games, and they know how to win close games. They know how to eke things out. And unlike last year, they're more multiple on offense because now they have a quarterback who can throw a forward pass 40 times a game if need be and not have a massive drop-off. Georgia is the last team on here. From a power ratings angle, they're the worst team on this list by a mile. But part of that is probably due to their style of play and the fact that they like to load manage against the small teams and their strength of schedule. They have a tougher strength of schedule than anyone on this list, minus like maybe Oregon. They might be with Oregon in strength of schedule, but it's a tougher schedule than Notre Dame, Ohio State, Texas Tech, or Indiana have faced that Georgia has played. Smart, until further notice, I still believe is the nation's best head coach, and I'm not coming off of that. That is what makes Georgia scary. Very much like Indiana, in my perspective, but more so just straight up head coach and then the defense angle where they can throw different looks at you defensively and offensively. It's similar to Notre Dame where that rushing attack when it's going is very consistent, and they have a quarterback who can keep the football safe and do enough through the air to keep them on schedule. Don't want to talk about Georgia much more than that because when you look at the metrics They, in theory, aren't scary. But take a bit of a human component, adjust for some things, adjust for the fact that I think outside of Indiana over Oregon, they have the nation's most impressive win over Texas in the fashion they dominated that game, and just ask yourself, would you want to play Kirby Smart? Would you really want that? Maybe in theory you do, but after you play them and maybe lose, do you want that? I don't know. Only the fiercest competitor, of which all of these head coaches I would say are the fiercest competitors, would want to play any of these teams in the playoffs. Those are the teams that no one would want to face. That, for example, I'm a Michigan fan. I would prefer it outside of Ohio State because that's a rivalry game if we just never played any of those teams. Like, if we had to make a schedule for this year among the playoff participants, those teams I would choose last. And some of them I would even put on the road because I don't think Michigan could even beat them at home. That's what I talk about when I say these teams are scary and you would not want to face them. Thank you for watching. It's my mission on College Football with Sam to make you the most informed, knowledgeable, and entertained fan as possible. We aren't perfect, but we hit the nail on the head more often than we hit our thumb with the hammer. Make sure to like, subscribe, ring the notification bell, comment, and if you're here, you've probably already watched the whole video. So thank you for doing those things.